Is it working now?
Yeah, we're good. There's sound in the background.
Onward, set the beat on flow. Whoa.
What is up, everybody? We are ready. We are getting started. We have another Money Match Gaming podcast here to talk Marvel Spider-Man. But first, let me introduce my co-host, Dan Estrata.
Oh, you're not even going to introduce yourself?
Nope. We're starting with Dan.
I'll introduce you as I introduce myself. Bam. All right. So that's right there. That's Lance the Infinite. I'm Dan Estrata. I don't have an AKA. I guess I do on Xbox, called Poomerine or Poomer Dan or Poomer Jan. Poomer Jan. That's right. I'm Poomer Jan on Xbox, and I'm Poomer Dan on the Switch. But just call me Dan. And today we're here to talk about Spider-Man, the new game for the PS4 was released September 7th. It is exclusive to the PS4. It is published by Sony, and it is developed by Insomniac. You might know them better from the Sunset Overdrive and Ratchet & Clank series. Well, Sunset Overdrive is not a series yet, but there is talks about a sequel. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But right now we're talking about Spider-Man. Lance, you want to give us a little background information?
I'll give you a little sprinkle. So, Sony Interactive Entertainment and Insomniac Games and Marvel have teamed up to create a brand new and authentic Spider-Man adventure. All right, this isn't the Spider-Man you've met or ever seen before. This is an experienced Peter Parker who's more masterful at fighting big crime in the New York City. At the same time, he's struggling to balance his chaotic personal life and career while fate of millions of New Yorkers rest upon his shoulders. A little tongue-tied there at the end. But yeah, that sums it up, I suppose, yeah?
Yeah.
So, take us off, Dan. Take us on that wonderful adventure.
This was a good game, in my opinion. This is up there with my other 2 Game of the Year nominees of God of War and Dead Cells. This is in that group. This is the first game I've 100%ed since Lego Harry Potter, I think, or maybe Lego Star Wars. It was a Lego game was the last game I 100%ed, but this is the first game I 100% in a long time. So I obviously took a liking to this game, like many did, and it wasn't a very long 100%. I think it's like 20, 25 hours max to 100% the game. That's doing all the side stuff. It's not necessarily 3-starring everything or golding everything as far as the challenges go, but it is completing everything. And yeah, very, very, very fun game from start to finish. Some pros I have is the gameplay, super fluid. Whether it be the combat system, which is like Arkham Knight, but way more Spider-Man in tuned. Like, just because Spider-Man is so much more acrobatic and athletic than Batman, whereas Batman is more kind of brute force type thing. There's so much more you can do with it, and it really shows with just the movement of the character and how everything is performed in combat. And that also translates to like out of combat when you're just flying around the city. It feels great. Like they have fast travel in this game. You do unlock fast travel like midway through the game, but I only used it to get the achievement of fast traveling 5 times. I never used it otherwise because it was just so much more fun to just swing around and be Spider-Man in this giant playground in New York City that they've provided with you. And harkens back to the days of playing Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 2, where it has a similar physics-based web swinging and not just kind of like shooting your web into the air and you can swing wherever. It's top of the line. Like this game, I cannot say enough praise about it. The story is incredible. It really like picks up at the end of Act 1. At the what was it? Norman Osborn's campaign. I guess I don't know how to put it exactly. He was at a little press conference type deal.
Okay.
He had a little press conference honoring Miles Morales' dad, and all shit popped off from there. Then the transition from Act 2 to Act 3, even crazier stuff happens. You're like, I got you, Mr. Negative. You're going to jail. And then the Sinister Six unite, and all hell breaks loose in the city. All good things. Great ending. Beautiful, beautiful tributes. I'm not going to say who dies. Characters do die, though, at the end. I don't want to ruin that for anybody who hasn't played the game. I'll just keep this strictly as little spoiler-free as I can. I've said a couple, but I don't want to spoil too much of this game because I think it is a very fun and enjoyable story to play through by yourself for whoever may be playing the game in the future, because it is so well told, and for a Spider-Man game to have this much like depth and heart to it, it's really, really cool. I liked that you could play as Miles Morales. Granted, this was pre-Spider-Man Miles Morales, but those who don't know, Miles Morales is he's in the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book series and shows. He is half Hispanic, half black, and he takes up he pretty much becomes the heir to Spider-Man's powers. He also gets bit by a spider. He's a little different than Spider-Man, where Spider-Man is like a more intelligent scientific person. Miles kind of has the same intelligence, but more so into tech. more into on the technology side of things. So even in this game, when you use him, sometimes he uses like a little gadget that he has that hacks nearby like electronics to do his bidding essentially and distract people. Because when his missions and Mary Jane missions are very stealthy, since they don't really have powers at the time, there's not really anything they can do other like they can't combat, so they just kind of hide and go through these little mazes. But a lot of people don't like those levels. I think those levels are fun. Yes, if you get caught, it sucks, but there's so many save points on those levels that when you do get caught, it's not like game shattering. You don't have to go like 10 minutes back and be like, oh, now I gotta hide all over again. Like, no, you go like 2 seconds back, like big deal. Go back to the bookshelf you were hiding behind and just do it again.
Right.
So I didn't have problems with any of those.
Well, some of my general feelings about the game is obviously it's pretty awesome. Now I didn't have as much time to play as Dan did, so I'll just go ahead and throw that out there now. I had a lot less time to play the game, but I did put a few hours into it, and I actually do enjoy the game. There appears to be on the surface level not much to complain about. It's just it's a pretty built thing, and they took elements of a lot of different games that went really well. So for example, it really feels like kind of like this mix of Assassin's Creed and Arkham Knight kind of blended in one, to where like you said, the storytelling seems to be really, really good from what I've experienced thus far and what I've actually looked up on reviews to prepare for today's podcast and stuff like that. There's lots of compelling things. Like you said, there were a lot of people who did complain about some of those side quest missions and so on and so forth, but they do seem really short too. They don't really seem like the main objective of anything, and then that they actually take the time to go, hey, we know you just want to swing through the streets of New York. Let's just get back to it. But for the sake of actually telling a story and being in the game and stuff, like let's slow down a little bit. Let's tell the story that we were here to tell. And I kind of
think that's great. I think that's an element that's missing to a lot of Spider-Man stories is the other people's perspectives and the things that not just because, especially in this story, he's not alone. Like he needed the help of Miles. He needed the help of Mary Jane, which is cool.
So it's like I kind of hate when people complain about stuff like that, though. I only wanted this game to be this one-dimensional, and like those kinds of comments and statements just kind of make me upset because it's like, like why though? It's just it's like people who hate, like who like multiplayer games and multiplayer games only. Like I like the story, I like the story building, I like the interactions with the game and stuff. That's what makes you love the characters to begin with. And so for me, I don't understand why people's brains do that to where they get upset at one small part of the game that helps build a more dynamic story. Because if it's only Spider-Man, like you mentioned earlier, it becomes this one-dimensional experience that just isn't as compelling as story-wise. So it's like, like you said, being behind, the mask the entire time really limits your ability to tell a more compelling story, because like even in the shows, Spider-Man spent a lot of time, demasked and stuff.
Well, you do play as Peter Parker a couple
times. Yeah, I know.
You don't really ever do anything as him other than, talk to people, say what's up.
Right, and congratulate,
and May.
Yeah, and things of that nature. So it's like, I just don't, the 3 to 5 minutes that you spend doing those missions clearly isn't something to complain about. And it kind of frustrated me that like I kind of learned through the grapevine that, that's kind of what people were griping about, because I was like, like why?
Yeah, and none of them are really hard. Like the stealthy missions is Miles and whatchamacallit and Mary Jane. I didn't think any of them were particularly hard. I thought the AI on those like levels was actually kind of bad sometimes. Like you'd be like right next to them, they would not see you for some reason, or they could see you and you could just be like, oh, let me just hide behind this bookshelf, and then completely forget you were there. So like I could understand complaining about that, but just like I don't like the levels because it takes away from the Spider-Man. Like I get that because the Spider-Man is by far the most fun part of the game, but it adds such an important element to the story. I think.
And I mean, like, in every review they say that, and there's, like, plenty of people who made fun of it, like Donkey and stuff like that, and to
Mhm.
where, like, the first 30 seconds people are like, you really feel like Spider-Man. But I
Yeah.
don't, I don't, I don't understand why anybody would complain about that either, because it's just one of those things to where it's like, that's the best part, is you feel in costume, you feel immersed, you
For
feel
sure.
like a part of the experience.
The donkey thing is that's a joke harrowing back to when he did his Batman, when he was talking about Batman Arkham Asylum,
Mhm.
or actually he was talking about how IGN and like those big company reviewers are very like faceless and will say the same things all the time and just repeat themselves. So
Okay.
he goes to their reviews and it just littered with feels like Batman, feels like Batman. He's like, huh, I wonder how many other reviews said feels like Batman, and looked it up, and there's just like hundreds of reviews, and they all say feels like Batman. So he was doing the same thing with the Spider-Man, because it, like, while I do agree there is a sense of feeling like Spider-Man, it's just like, come on, man, use a new phrase. So I get where, like, what, it's just a
There's
callback to
no
one of his
better
other jokes.
phrase though. So I get
I
the
get it. I
joke.
get
I
it.
get
Right.
the
I do get
joke.
it.
But if
But
it's
yeah.
real and it's authentic and they're not just spicing it up, it's a pro nonetheless,
Right,
and it's
right. No,
something that I would definitely have to
he.
mention.
Like I said, I think that was mainly based off of the fact that it was a callback to one of his earlier jokes. So he's like, "Let me throw this in for the fans here," because I like when he did the whole feels like Spider-Man thing, I laughed. I actually wrote "feels like your Spider-Man lol donkey" on my notes here. So
But like that's clearly one of the best parts is like you immediately go into the game, you
yeah.
hold R2 and you're like, "Oh shit. Whoa, look at Spider-Man flow. Is this what it feels like? Is this the real experience that you're supposed to feel when you watch the show and watch him do all these weird flips and stuff like that?" Cuz there was so many times where I'm in the movie and I'm watching him kind of just throw it out there and reach and kind of do these things and I see his body move in such weird ways. But this game makes me appreciate that. I'm like,
Yeah.
if this is how he actually feels, who wouldn't do shit like this? Like
Yeah,
the
man. You're
weird,
just
like
hanging out, dude. You're just floating around in the sky pretty
just
much.
letting it go, man, letting it flow, and you
Yeah.
can really feel the flow, and it's just like it's clearly one of the best parts of the game, and they
Yeah. Oh,
probably they've probably storyboarded that one aspect of the game like 60% of the time that they spent on this game, it has to feel this way. And I just felt like that there's so much time invested in that. It just doesn't feel like it'd be easy. It just like they
Oh, I'm
literally
sure
went
this
through.
game was no easy task. And like
No.
they like even before this game ever came out, like from that announcement, they knew it had. I mean, even before the announcement, they knew taking on an IP like this, it had to be big. Like it had to be good. You know, Activision had some good Spider-Man games, and then towards the end, they started pumping out crap, and that's why Sony took the IP away from them. So it's they knew what they were doing. They knew this had to be like an incredible Spider-Man experience, and they took all the best parts of all the older Spider-Man games and combined them, I think, into one in this game, which made it feel really great.
Yeah,
But it most harkens back to Spider-Man 2 on the PS2.
yeah, it was just amazing. You couldn't ask for more as far as that aspect is concerned. Like you just couldn't. I do have a small gripe, and I know
Yeah.
that with more time and more experience with the game, it wouldn't feel that way. I feel like going over buildings was a little bit clunky. I hated the kind of jagged switch from I'm completely flowing. I hit the top of a building, and then I don't quite do it right, and it feels like I kind of get stuck on objects. In a
Yeah,
sense.
it's just it feels really fluid once you get used to it. It's about like hitting buttons at the right time to like jump off the right objects and pick up speed off of everything and use your momentum in proper ways. But the first few times getting up on the building, like when you're not too sure what to do, when you're like just climbing up, it can feel a little slow. But once you get a hang of it, you
Right.
pretty much just hold R2 the whole time. If you like when you're walking up a building, you use the R2 to run, and when you get to the top, you'll just like launch off.
Okay, that wasn't quite happening. I would get stuck on like water towers or like satellites or
And then
just
there's
kind of
like
different objects on top of
zipping to
the.
stuff.
Yeah,
Gotta
and
make
like
sure it's
it just didn't feel as clean as I wanted to. Like before I was playing the game before we started our podcast as well. There was a couple like backpacks under some awkward like ceilings and stuff, and like there was some like weird things that I had to do to make it the way I wanted to, because like I kind of just want to stick to the wall and kind of go faster than like snail pace, and so there was like
Yeah,
some
the only
clunky
way
things.
to do that is you have to run.
Right. And so you get to the bottom of it and you'd run up. And that's kind of what I ended up doing. But I feel like that should have been easier. And, so there's just like, I'm griping, but that's just what you have to do in these types of things when you're actually going into the game and stuff like that. Because obviously it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. But, if I were to talk about any of that kinds of stuff, like that's kind of some of my issues. And I think, like, in general, the combat system could be a little better. I'm used to games like Ninja Gaiden where, there's like a long list of combos that you could do. I felt a lot of the times I ended up smashing square, and like,
Yeah,
I just want a little bit more complexity than that.
Right. There's not a lot of complexity with the combos, but it still feels. I mean, that I will give you that. It's not a very complex game, but I think that works for it too.
Yeah, I mean, but they could have made it simple. There could have been strong attacks,
like,
weak
like
attacks.
it's the same thing like Batman. Well, there kind of is. There's you have the web-based attacks as Y, and then you have the whatchamacallit, the melee
the
attacks
knockups and
with
stuff.
square. Yeah, and you have the hold square, and then you get them in the air, and you air combo them, and you can like throw them onto the ground. Like there's a little bit more you can do. But
Yeah, and you can unlock a couple things like web swing and stuff like that. But even still, it's pretty simple. Like you learn the basic square buttons and like that's about it. And it's like it feels very reminiscent of Dragon Ball Z. Like you can do custom combos in Dragon Ball Z though, so but like for the most part, it's not like some long list of command lists like most fighter games like Mortal Kombat and Tekken and all those different types of things.
well, I mean, this isn't really a fighter game.
I mean, again, I would compare it to something like Ninja Gaiden. It's just in an open world,
Yeah,
and I feel
it's like Batman. And
right,
Batman
and
doesn't really have crazy.
it was
control
definitely one of my issues with that game as well. So it crosses over to those different types of games, and again, it's not a terrible combat system. These are just small little gripes that I was like, my experience would have been enhanced if some of those elements were included. And it's like it's a great game. It's just like sometimes I feel like I bring these up so we have something to talk about, and you kind of and it's like I don't really want you to feel that way. It's just
say whatever you want to say.
Well,
man.
I'm just basically trying to explain that I just want it to be like this would enhance the experience and not.
I disagree. I think it would take away from the experience because the combat right when you're thrown in it is not necessarily easy. I mean, it is once you get a hang of it. But it takes like it takes a few fights to get used to. And then as you progress through the game, the enemies get more difficult. So you have to do more dodging, use more of your abilities, use more of your gadgets. So I think maybe because you only played a very little bit, it only felt like you were mashing X, but later on, or square, like later on, you're doing a lot more. You're dodging a lot more. You're, taking people's missiles and throwing them back at them. You have to take things off of cars and throw them at them. You got to web them to walls. You got to, use all your different gadgets to do different things. So,
I mean, I fully explored it. It's still relatively simple. And like obviously like the complexity does kind of increase when you're dealing with different kinds of enemies. Like I had a hard time with the brutes. They always just come in the most awkward times, and then their like swing patterns are always weird. So like the white's like tingling, and I'm like, oh, my spider sense, and I'm mashing circle, and they seem to punch me anyway. And I'm like, all right, I don't like these dudes. And I mean, like, you should just web them right away, but like I'm too fancy, maybe too prideful. I usually save those dudes for last, and I like zipping around. I like jumping.
I save it for last too, but you don't have web bombs yet, I imagine. But
no,
web bombs are great. You just throw them and everybody gets webbed, or you use the suit ability for one of the first few suits that you get that webs everybody up. That suit ability is super good.
So, I mean, like, I don't know. It's like there's not much to say about the game other than it's pretty awesome. So,
acted, great selection of costumes, like all of that. There's only one costume I didn't like. There's this one called Spirit of something or other. It's kind of like a Ghost Rider costume.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Skull head. It's just uncomfortable. It's a weird looking skin. I did not like it at all. But all the other ones look great.
Yeah, that wasn't really in the spirit of Spider-Man. I feel like that was like
No,
some
and
fan
there
in
was
the
no
company that
there
were
was
like,
no Ghost Rider like real reference or anything in the game, so I was kind of like thrown off at why that was even there.
not somebody like in the company just drew something and they just loved it, and then they
Yeah.
just kind of begged
Because
and
there were,
begged
well, I
and
mean, there
begged
was
and
a couple
begged.
like like the Velocity suit is unique to this game. The anti-ox suit, which you get during the end of the game, is unique to this game. The whatchamacallit, I mean, obviously the main suit that you build with Doctor Octavius. That's the suit on the cover that's new to this game. The negative suit that's exclusive to this game. I think that's it. I think all the other ones have some sort of lore to them, but I think it's just maybe I don't know if the there's this one suit I forget what it's called where he wears black jeans and boots and like a leather jacket.
Oh yeah. It's like the one of the first ones. I
No,
don't know
no,
what it's
no, no,
called.
no, no, not Noir. You're thinking of
Oh
Noir.
yeah, I'm thinking Noir.
That is from a Spider-Man timeline. He has a gun in that one. You actually can see a gun on the side of that skin.
Okay.
But in this is one of the later ones you get. He's got like a red mask, a red and black like leather
Okay.
jacket, black jeans, and
And
black.
a lot of the reviews, they basically said that they didn't know for sure, but they think it's a reference to the Red Hood.
Well, it looks like Red Hood. Yeah, that's what I always thought. I thought it looked like Red Hood. And then they have that other skin, the Mark IV, that looks like kind of like Deadshot from DC, but obviously that's not what it's supposed to be. But yeah, maybe it's a reference to Red Hood. I don't know, but it does remind me of Red Hood, and it's a very cool looking suit.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know, it's just like, it's just maybe a little fan service, like, again, it just feels a lot like the Ghost Rider kind of costume to where it's just clearly somebody likes it, and like that was just a good enough reason to do it, and like quite honestly, I think that suit looks pretty dope.
Which
it looks really clean. The Red Hood one.
Yeah,
Like,
that one's great. That's
it looks awesome.
That's probably one of my top 3 suits. My number 1 is the vintage suit. I think that one is so ridiculous because of how it's a different art style than the rest of the game. It really, really pops. Like, it looks really pretty.
Oh yeah, you can tell.
Yeah, because it's like cell shaded, whereas everything else is, like the regular 3D graphics. And I like how the skin comes into play in the cutscenes. It doesn't happen in a lot of games like this, but I did like that it happened in this game. Except sometimes it like took me out of the scene because I'd be wearing like my fucking vintage suit, and it would look so much weirder than everything in the background. And they're trying to have like this serious conversation. I'm like, it looks weird, but that's great. But,
so what about Watergate, the Puddlegate thing? Like
non-issue.
Yeah, no, it was like one of those things that it was like,
Dumbest
man,
thing
like,
ever.
yeah, no, it's like people just want to complain, man, and it was just
People want to complain. Yeah, they'll complain about anything. They'll complain just for the sake of complaining, and it's so silly. Like, it hadn't even come out yet, and they're like, "Oh my god, this game's gonna be so bad. They've already announced the DLC." Like, shut up! I'm so excited they announced the DLC already, dude. You know how excited I am to have a DLC in a month for this game? I can't wait to get back into this game. There's no reason for me to play it right now because I've already 100%ed it and gotten that platinum trophy. But I would like to play it again.
So what does the DLC include? Because I'm not actually familiar.
So there's 3 DLCs coming out. One October, one November, one December. The only one they've announced so far is the October one, which seems like it's going to be centered around Black Cat, who you do missions for in the game. She has these little side quests, and you get a pretty cool looking suit from her. But there's nothing else with her. So this is going to be a more Black Cat type storyline. Story. I don't know how long it's going to be. I guess maybe like 5 hours or so. I'm not entirely sure. They haven't really said too much about it. But regardless, I'm excited for it. I think the whole idea for the DLC is to be Silver Sable related, who is in this game for a decent portion, but you never like really. You confront her kind of once, but then get her on your side. It's interesting. I don't know exactly how they're going to work it in.
Okay, so it's like extra story, maybe just a list of side quests of some kind.
It's like filler. It's like side filler. It's not going to, like, I don't think it's going to continue off from where the game ended. I mean, it could, because a couple things happened in the end that
Leave it wide open is what I heard.
Yeah, we'll leave it open for a second game, right? And to build up new characters. So maybe we'll see Miles be trained more in the DLC or whatever. I don't know, but I think that'll be more so the story for the second game.
Okay. Like the way this one feels, like and like because this is just a random question that I kind of like have started thinking about when games start coming out. The whole service-based games. Like this game doesn't feel like you could uplift it anymore. I mean, there isn't a lot of mechanics that I would actually want to add to the game. So, what do you think about them just adding on more story to the actual game itself, like in a more like serious manner, to where it's like main game type of stuff and not side quests? Like, how do you feel about that? Just because I like sprinkling that question when I think about new games.
Yeah, I mean, I would feel fine because this game plays fine. Like, I have no problem with the way this game plays or feels. If they just like instead of came out with another one, just was like, here's a full content DLC, which is the size of the original story or whatever, with more extra shit to do. Like, I'd be cool with that. I don't know how much extra stuff they could put in. The only problem with Spider-Man is that he's kind of limited to New York City, so it's always going to kind of feel the same, Like, the games will look different and they'll play different and they'll be better or whatever, but you're always for the most part kind of stuck in New York. So how much more stuff can you do in New York? I mean, like, New York is a big city, but
right. And I mean, like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess. But
that's only ever like my only issue ever with Spider-Man is that he's kind of always in New York, and I get it. He's like, that's his deal. And I love Spider-Man. Like, I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt right now. But that's where Spider-Man games kind of suffer, is that you can't like, there's only so much you can add. Like, how much can they really add to the next game? Like, if they do come out with a sequel rather than the DLC type thing, which I understand they probably will. What else are you going to add to the city to make it feel different,
That wouldn't bother me, though. I wouldn't mind seeing the same things. But, like, having another mainstay, like, story about a villain would be pretty awesome. And so, as long as you're dabbling extra elements of different kinds of villains and exploring those different types of things, I think my experience would be fulfilled. I'd feel happy about that. I would enjoy that.
I mean, I definitely would be like, I love this game so much, so 100% I'd be happy to play it again like that. But I just feel like it's weird because there's not a lot of other games where you'll play the sequel and it still take place in the same place where the first version took place. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I guess I definitely get that, and I respect that. It's just, I don't know, the scenery never really felt the most important thing to me. I was always one of those dudes that, like, accepted good graphics, but wasn't necessarily a requirement. Like, I can go back and play an old game,
right,
usually painlessly,
Unless it's not the graphics so much that it's the
same
general location.
Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. It still doesn't bother me so much, as long as I'm fully engaged in what it is we're doing, especially in a single player game, which is, extra bosses, like extra puzzles. Like, I like all those different types of things. Sorry, excuse me. So, as long as those things were met, I feel like my experience would still be just as good. I'd still smile at those facts. I would still enjoy and engage, and, like, that's kind of the goal, It's like, it's no different than, the different cities in Grand Theft Auto. Now, mind you, they do go to different cities and stuff like that, but if it was in the same place with different missions, with different kinds of, like, mechanics or add-ons and stuff like that. So when I say adding new villains, like, I've noticed that there's, like, a theme with different kinds of places. So you go to the beat-em-up place to where you beat up a large villains while you're taking out Fisk Warehouse and stuff like that. Then you have the demons, and you kind of fight those different kinds of enemies. And there's, like, different elements to that. Like, if they could incorporate those different types of experiences with new DLC that had different bosses, I think that would be great. Now, the one question I do have to ask that I haven't got to experience because I've only fought Shocker at the moment, like, how are the bosses? Because I hear they're pretty lame, actually. Like, the story's great, but the actual fight.
Hard. I think the hardest encounter in my opinion, and I didn't even fail on it. I might have failed once. Was Rhino versus Scorpion, or Rhino and Scorpion versus you, mainly because it was just you had to avoid Rhino charging at you and Scorpion spitting at you. But other than that, it was not really like necessarily really difficult or anything.
So
They were fine. I really liked the encounter. Well, the final fight was really good, and then the one before the last fight was my favorite. It was Martin Lee. I liked him a lot. Just not necessarily that fight, but I thought it was. Yeah, I liked that fight. I thought the fight was cool, and I thought what happened with him was pretty cool.
Okay, but not anything like, oh, they were so outstanding. They were just
No.
experiences and stuff like that. And so I heard that kind of sucked, and that kind of blows because I usually enjoy challenging boss fights. I'm like. In this sense, I know you talk about it a lot about how hard a game needs to be and stuff like that. But I can be a little masochist when it comes to this. I like a good challenge. I like difficulty in those types of situations, and now I just know it's gonna be a breeze, and like that's not super exciting.
I mean, it just depends how comfortable you are with everything. Like if you don't ever get too comfortable with the controls and using all your gadgets and whatnot, it could feel a lot harder. But because I felt well versed by the time I got to that boss that I'm just like dipping and dodging everything, that it was very difficult for him to touch me.
That dude Dan, I was gadget up,
and I could just heal so often. So
right, yeah. So it sounds pretty easy, man. Like, and
I think the game would be a lot harder if it didn't have that like little heal function. It would be significantly harder. I use that thing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm breezing through it, and I have the hardest difficulty on at the moment, I think. But like the little time I spent, I'm already like 20% done with the game, which is kind of confusing. Because I mean, I only put like
have
4.
you been doing like side stuff and stuff?
That's all I've kind of been doing.
Exactly.
On my way, I stop on all.
That's a big portion of the game is side stuff.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that stuff. I've only gone so deep into the story though, and it's just like, oh, I got to go over here. Well, there's like 4 landmarks on the way. I might as well. Oh, there's a backpack.
Yeah, that's exactly how I played too. I mean, I started the game by making sure I got all the like cell towers. I did that. That was the first thing when I could do that. I was like, I need to discover this whole map. I did that. And then anytime I heard a crime, I would go do the crime. I would like only pass, like if I passed a backpack, I'd go get it. I wouldn't go out of my way for backpacks except when I was trying to collect them. But yeah, I mean, you just move around the city so much, like you're bound to just come across everything.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of just generally how I played the game. So, that's kind of how I felt. But, that's pretty much it for me, man. It was a good game. Anything to add, man?
No, not really. We've touched upon everything I had to say.
Yeah. So, like overall, man, like I would give the game kind of like an 8 for this, because like I'm not super big on these types of game types. Like for me, platformers are great, but like they always have a limited life for me. I can go through the experience once. I feel like that's pretty much it. I could go through the experience once, and then I feel accomplished, and then the challenge kind of leaves me and stuff. And I'm that way with a lot of things, so I don't really want to give the opinion that like, oh, I'm even with the things I like, it's really easy for me to put down. Like I do it with anime, I do it with games. There's a lot of things that I actually enjoy, and then just go for some reason or another, life or something. I just put it down, and then that's kind of that. But, from what I experienced of this game, I would definitely give this game, like, high praise. I don't want to give it a perfect score, but I definitely give it an 8. It's a fun, great experience, and, like, something that anybody who likes these types of games can play. And if you love these types of games, like, this is for sure for you. Like, it was made and designed in every aspect that it was supposed to have a compelling experience. So...
Yeah, I mean, definitely gets a yes, a duh. Definitely play it for me. Like I said, it's one of my top 3 games of the year. This, Dead Cells, God of War, all 3 games have their own unique experience and unique reasons why I like them. But this game, it lived up to its expectations. I was really hyped for this game. I had it pre-ordered for a few months. I mean, I pre-order a lot of games physical. I don't pre-order a lot of games digital or whatever. But I did pre-order this game. I was really excited about it, and yeah, it was great. It was incredible. It was a really, really fun experience. Like I said, I 100%ed it, which I did not have to do, but I wanted to do. Like, I didn't fight the last boss until I had everything else done before fighting the last boss. So when I finished the last boss, I was truly done with the game. And yeah, that's nothing but praise on my end. It's great. It's a very, very, very good game. Very fun.
Okay. So that does it for Money Match Gaming. We have not decided our subject for next week, but we'll go ahead and let you guys know. We've started a new series. If you guys aren't familiar, we're going to do one-off topics. I'm sure we're eventually figure out a word for these different kinds of content series and stuff like that. But you guys can be on the lookout for those. They'll pop up randomly when we have time to record and anything like that. And then you can check that stuff out on YouTube. We'll probably end up sharing it to Facebook and things of that nature, and maybe providing clips of that on Instagram and stuff like that. So please be sure to check that stuff out as it comes out and we begin to roll it out. Once again, we have started different series with our podcast as well. We do something basically we kind of called Show and Tell, which is kind of like a podcast to where we kind of come in, talk a little bit about what we like and what we've been playing and doing, as well as providing a forecast for future games coming out that month. That stuff is changing. So, we took some of that stuff that we were providing in that podcast out. So, just be looking out for that. If you guys have any suggestions on how you guys want to see that content, please be sure to let us know. We're always listening, so let us know. Dan, any closing remarks or thoughts or feelings, my man?
No, nothing for me. Go play Spider-Man. Do it. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Do you not have a PS4? Go get that Spider-Man PS4. That thing looks sweet. And give me your controller because I want that controller, but there's no reason for me to buy another PlayStation.
So that does it, guys. Thank you, D-Live, for all those upvotes. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
We appreciate the love, man. We appreciate the love. But I'm gonna go ahead and shut us down until next time, guys.